they're trained in a certain ideology, which is purely biologically based. So they look upon the human body as a physiological entity divided into various organs and systems, and that's what they deal with. And what they're not taught is that human beings, the mind and the body, the emotions and the physiology are inseparable, scientifically inseparable, and we have the science to show the unity. They're also not taught that human beings are social creatures, so that our very physiology is shaped by our social relationships, and our very brains develop in a social context, so that whether we're talking about neurophysiology, psychology, or the physiology of the body, we're talking about influences that go well beyond our genetic and physiological endowment. They're not taught that, and therefore when they see a person, what they see is a disease in a particular organ. Whereas if you're a generalist, properly trained, or at least a generalist who's developed a broader view, you see that human being in context, you see it in relationship to their lives, in relationship to their environment, and you see that the illness, whether it's addiction or depression or anxiety, or for that matter, rheumatoid arthritis or scleroderma or anything else, is a manifestation not just of a system, but of an entire life. And that life is lived in a context. And we have to address that if we're going to deal with the illness. And unfortunately, both you and I have had the experience of having to come to that conclusion through our own work and through our own internal experience of dissatisfaction with how our lives are going. But nobody taught this to us. I don't see this as a gloomy discussion, because I think for people to understand themselves, they need to look at all aspects of their existence. So to me, this is illuminating. And St. Paul says somewhere that once you shed light into darkness, the darkness itself becomes light. And so that I just think we have to look at all these dark places. We have to shed light into all of them so we can fully understand ourselves. To me, that's a positive. I'm always delighted to find out something about myself that maybe I haven't seen so clearly before. I always find it liberating, and I believe people do as well. What we haven't said, though, and I think probably both you and I would agree, is that the human beings have a tremendous healing capacity.
Yeah.
And one of the failures of modern medical training is that we put all the expertise and the hope for help into the hands of the physician. The physician is the one who's going to deliver the cure, but we don't teach people about the innate healing capacity of the human being, and we don't learn how do you promote that healing capacity. We may have to administer whatever treatments are appropriate and whatever genius treatments we've developed.
Sure.
That's great. But nevertheless, that person still has an innate healing capacity. How do we engage it? How do we evoke it? How do we encourage it? That's not a question that we ask ourselves, and yet there's many examples of people healing or doing much better with illnesses than medical prognosis would have told them. Now look at the recent death of Stephen Hawking, the physicist, who I discuss in one of my books. Now, he was given 2 years to live when he was 20 years old. He outlived his diagnosis by more than 5 decades. Something in him allowed him to do that. Something in him that the medical mind could not have fathomed at the time. So there's much more to people than we realize. And so we have to have a lot more faith and a lot more curiosity. What is it in people that allows them to overcome the challenge of addiction? What is it that helps them live much longer than we had predicted? What is healing? What is becoming whole really all about? These are the questions that medicine ought to engage with, but unfortunately it does not.